That's
That
that's
evidence.
propaganda. I got something on you.
Yeah.
Square boy, jazz square hand. What'd you say it was?
Jazz hands. There's the jazz square is like a dance move that you do. Jazz hands are. Da.
I just remember square dancing in elementary school because of the cute girls. That was the goal.
Yeah. I wasn't very good at it. Couldn't coordinate it. Too much going on. Any more than
Also,
this.
what's it look like Birmingham? I see the last time I watched TV, Birmingham Medical was quoted quite a bit. There are doctors. You have a big medical effort there in
Yeah, it's huge. Actually, they just today, a guy that I grew up with his kids, and he's one of the doctors. He's a disease expert at one of the hospitals here, and he's been developing a drug for coronavirus, and it's going to become the standard treatment. I forgot what it's called, but it's not a vaccine, but it's a drug that helps just destroy the virus over time. But it's kind of the first step towards a vaccine. I read the article; it was really interesting. But yeah, UAB Medical Center here is really big. So there's a ton.
They're on the news a lot. There's some smart cats down there.
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan's Brad from Tire-Rack. Ryan Finch, he's also Brad from Tire-Rack, is watching from Michigan since he's not traveling to South Bend. Yeah, this would be the One Lap of America week for folks that I know we got some folks that are on here regularly that do that event. So that's a major bummer because that's a really cool event. But
I'd do it with you next year. You want to do it next year? I haven't been able to. My knees. I can't sit.
Are you
for
talking
a long
to me?
period of time. Yeah, I'm talking to you.
I would totally do it.
You. How do I do? Point to the right.
I'm 100% in your car.
Fuck yeah. I mean, yes.
It's the internet. You can.
I've turned down 3 invites.
Let's do it. I think that'd be a blast. We have some really good data. I think we could do it for the sake of data. Have some great variety of tracks, a lot of good data. Share it with everybody.
That'd be fun. I had some friends do it in a rental car, and then the rental car blew up, so they bought an ambulance, a used ambulance, and they put deer horns on the front. You know who I'm talking about, Marlon? His nickname, his initials are DW. He had a green Mazda team that Tom Long used to run on. Him and Rhett bought a used, almost trashed ambulance and finished the one lap in an ambulance. Had a naked, not a naked lady, had a stuffed what do they call it? Mannequin. A mannequin on front in the deer horns.
Oh, that's great.
I remember he called me. He's like, "Hey man, can you do me a favor? Can you go pick this up? Because we left it at a track and they're going to charge us for it. Can you take it?" Anyway. There's more one lap stories.
Okay, so it sounds like since there's people watching here, it sounds like that you and I are doing One Lap of America next year. So I'm just going to
committed to that.
I've got it recorded on here. So yeah, it'll be a good time. Waitlist 2021 waitlist. Better get on it. I guess we got to sign up. Okay. Well, Eric, we're here to talk about goals. So I know we've been goofing around a whole bunch, but we had some pretty productive conversations earlier about setting goals. And the reason I wanted to have this conversation was because we talk about data all the time and how to use it, but I kind of want to reset and go back to the beginning and talk about why are we going to the track in the first place? What are we trying to accomplish? Because that's everything we do, not just data, but every single thing we do to go to the track is built off of that.
Yeah, it was last week when I said, hey, we were talking about something, this, that, or the other, like we normally do. Rains and I talk probably once a day or once every 3 days for an hour, whatnot. Long story short, it ended up being, let's do a thing on goals and what sort of like best practices or goals to get to best practices. I don't know how, can't remember how we got here. Do you? How we got there? Last Thursday?
Yeah, we were talking about it last week, and we were trying to determine why do most people go to the track, or what are people motivated by? If you're using data, what's your motivation? Are you just trying to get faster, or is there something that's a little more there? So we want to understand from you watching what motivates you to go to the track in the first place, and what are you setting as your goals to accomplish that kind of greater goal. So I think it was kind of defining like the broad umbrella goal, and then kind of building
individual.
But using goal
It
setting
was
as a way
virus related. It was virus related. You and I were talking about people's motivation to go to the track right now. A lot of people are jonesing because I hadn't been tracked for a couple months, and
yeah.
certainly in the Midwest.
I think this is a good conversation to have because a lot of us have been sitting around. I haven't been on the track since the second week of March. Most people are in the same boat. A lot of people up in your neck of the woods haven't been on track at all this year because it's coming out of the winter. So
3 balls, Gingerman this past weekend. Everybody had a blast.
Wow. Good deal. Yeah, Chin was at AMP. Hey, Scott Spear, what's up? Welcome.
Howdy.
So there's all sorts of good stuff going on. But when you're coming back from, at this point, some people 4, 5, 6 months of not being at the track, kind of getting back in the groove. What are some things that we can do? Because we had all this time to get our cars worked on and be ready, which the reality, we all know that when things start snowballing and life starts happening, we have other priorities as well that come in. But what can we do right now today to start setting some goals? Because a lot of us probably have a track event on the calendar now, whether it's the end of this month, beginning of next. What can we do and what process are we going to go through to get ready now that we're closing in on that kind of, 4 or 5 weeks away from our track event? So the conversation point is, if you're listening, what are you thinking about right now? What are you setting for yourself as goals for getting back? Are you just trying to get back on the track? What are you thinking about kind of the greater goal? What were you working on from the end of last year? Or have you made some car changes, and what are some of your goals there? Maybe you're in time attack, time trials type stuff, and you want to improve your lap time. All those can be goals.
Full disclosure, you and I talked about this, about 2 hours ago for 90 minutes or so. And just really did a big exchange and talked about this exact subject. Personal stories and lessons learned throughout the years.
Yeah, I thought it was really productive too, because we went kind of into detail talking a little bit about car prep and some goals that revolve around that. And then we kind of went all the way full circle into data. And it was a really interesting kind of about face that you can define your goals in a lot of different ways. So do you want to start off by talking about sitting here at home? What are we doing to think about goal setting, or what are you doing to get back on the track? What kind of goals do you have?
Well, if we rekindle the conversation we had a couple hours ago here, which we both agreed was really good. It started out with, okay, it's going to start off with and come full circle here. It starts out before you leave to go to the track, and then you do full circle and come back, and it's going to the next event as well. So it's a full circle, full event. And I remember you and I talking about, well, I know and I said this, tell me if I'm wrong or not. I know we're going to Mid-Ohio, so I know the setup for the car. It likes a little more camber, likes a little more cross, about 50.5 on the cars that I've driven, a little bit, tiny bit of toe out, just a little bit for most cars. I'm going to have the car set up. I'm going to have all my data reviewed to know what I'm thinking about doing when I go attack. I got all my brake pads scrubbed in. I got all this stuff done, or a plan to scrub them to prep. So it's prepare, or execute to prepare, so that the ultimate goal is, how do you show up on grid on Saturday morning in the first spot, and you're the first guy, and you're sitting there taking a nap because all your shit's done. Personally, that's a goal. If I can do that, I know that things are looking pretty. I'm ready to go, not a care in the world. I'm just going to do the Ross Bentley, get into the visualization component.
Yeah. Has anybody watching had that happen on a race weekend? Have you had the race weekend where you got there? And be honest, it's fine if you haven't. A lot of us haven't. I struggled with this for years. Probably only ever happened a couple of times. Have you ever showed up the track, rolled up to the grid for your first warm-up session, test session, whatever it is, and you go, feel pretty good. And all you're thinking about is executing. You're getting in the zone. Scott Spear said he's doing the zone challenge that Ross is doing right now, the 30-day zone challenge. And
I'd be interested in that. Focused. I saw that. He's putting out so much material. I can't follow it all.
Yeah, I don't have enough time to keep up with all of it. It's good stuff. Ross was on here last Facebook Live we did. Ross was here. We talked about the mental side of data. What is it? What's going on in your mind when these lines are being drawn? Cameron Parsons, Ryan Burkert, both leaving some comments. Cameron says, good time to nut and bolt everything on your cars during the season. Lots of people just stick to maintenance schedules and making repairs. We've had an extended off season. So there's more time to dig into finer details of your car, double check all the things that might get ignored. That's something you were talking about earlier that real-time racing was really good at doing. The nut and bolt, the classic look at everything pro race team.
Let me tell that story.
I thought that was a great story. That goes right in line with this. And then we'll kind of, go back into, you talked about looking at data. I was going to talk a little bit about what I'd be doing preparing for my next event as far as looking at old data goes.
Cool. Rains asked me earlier, guys. Hey, Cameron. Hey, Ryan. Rains asked me earlier. He's like, what are some best practices you saw? What are some goals? You said, what are some goals that you have that you've seen other teams had? And I said, one thing I remember in World Challenge that stood out is Peter Cunningham's real-time Acura team. Every time I saw them and I would pass, their paddock spot would just be killer, tight, clean, and the car would be up on air jacks with the spacers underneath them, and there'd be a guy underneath every wheel cleaning something. And I always thought, what the heck are they doing cleaning something? And we got to be friends enough. Peter's, I call him Dad. It's an ongoing joke. I'll tell you about it another time. You know what? We got to get Peter on here. He's a good dude. I got friends enough to say, what's going on? They are clean fanatics, so much so that they use it as a preventive maintenance tool and they spend a lot of time underneath each of the corners. They wipe down the springs. They wipe down everything, and they're inspecting, not so much nut and bolting, because you can deal with safety wire easy, or you make pen marks, right, on to see if any nuts and bolts have moved. Yeah, that's the simple stuff. They're just wiping and cleaning and wiping, and invariably they would be down on grid, just hanging out, just chilling, dude, waiting for the race. Car's ready, everything's ready.
No panic.
Back to that first one grid. Down there, ready to go. So a goal to get to the point where you're just cleaning, because you've done all the heavy lifting and the and the gas and the fuel and the setup and the tire swap and running the new tires and swapping out the brake pads, because you're trying to scrub in or bed in all your pads. If you haven't done that, by the way, you should be doing that. It's what every morning is for. If you got new pads, scrub them in, put them back in the box.
One time I put 2 brake pads under my feet and sat on the back of a golf cart and pressed down on the ground, and I got drug around the paddock. And
you did not.
No, it wasn't to bed them in. It was because they wouldn't fit in the caliper. But it worked for that. But then we still had to bed them. It's a fun story. That was at Road America. But something that came to mind and that we talked about, you're talking about getting all this prep and all this stuff done so that you don't have to do it at the track in the moment. And the reality for a lot of folks is either you're the only one there running your car, whether it's a race car, a track car, whatever, or you've got one other, maybe 2 other people to help you. So a lot of times you're going to have to do stuff at the track. You're going to have to be busy. You might be instructing. You're doing all this stuff. But the kind of crux of the conversation here and the goal is to have a plan for all of that. So you know when you're going to put fuel in the car. You know that you're going to be doing something with the car after a session. You know when you're going to go over scales. You have a plan for every little thing that you're going to do with the car while you're at the track. And that does come a little bit from experience, but I've seen a lot of really experienced people that still run around the racetrack with their head cut off. You know that guy that's like, you see him at every event and you're like, he's always having to have stuff welded up and put together last minute because he forgot, and he's asking people for parts and that sort of thing. There's always those guys. So take the time to
last to grid. It goes back to being first on grid, right? Being fully prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was going to chat a little bit about, if you're sitting at home right now and you have some data from last year already logged, whatever system you're using, hopefully it's Apex Pro, and you're getting ready for the next event that's coming up here in the next couple of weeks, next month. I like to go back and just kind of do like a refresh session before I go to the track. And it's really, really simple. It's not even an in-depth kind of process. I'm just going to look at some straightforward stuff. First of all, lap times. But second of all, I'm just going to go look at the speed trace for a bunch of different laps. Say I went to
you got to get your head back in it. Yeah.
Just get back into familiarizing what you're looking at. And what
makes it so much faster when you go back to it. You don't have to go through that transition of like,
right.
Yeah.
You want to be able to answer the question with your new data, what did I do last time, without even having to overlay it. If you look at the things that are important and you get yourself back into that headspace of, oh yeah, last time I was at this track, I struggled with this, or I struggled with braking into whatever threshold turn. I wasn't comfortable attacking the brake pedal, or maybe the car had a big push or a big understeer in one corner that I couldn't get rid of. Try to recall some of those thoughts, feelings that you see, some of those things you might see referenced in the data. And then when you get back to the track this next time and you're logging new data, you already have a mental benchmark of what you did last time to kind of know where you are.
That works for a new upgraded car build. A lot of people on some jazz over the winter time, right? Maybe you'll get another setup.
A little horsepower.
To compare and contrast. And it works for the same car as well to measure progress. Works either way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be super detailed. You can go as detailed as you'd like. Don't look too far into it, because you can also get analysis paralysis and get distracted by something that's not that important. But try to define maybe 2 or 3 things in the data that are really important, whether it's a part of the track, like a section of track that you want to work on. Maybe it's just a technique. Hey, my brake release isn't that great. I need to work on how I get off the brake pedal. And I'm going to look at these 2 things. I don't have a hockey stick on my speed trace in a corner that I should. I'm going to work on that. Just kind of defining those things. That'll help a lot.
I look at those as seasonal type goals, things that you want to take a long time to do. If you're weight training, your goal isn't to, lose X pounds in the next 12 days. You're really looking, right, 120 days, 10 times that. Same way with driving. I'm looking farther out to go. Where do I want to be at the end of the season? Really, end of the season is preparing for 2021. You want to do big picture stuff? Everybody in here who's racing or in competitive time trialing should be thinking about 2021 season. That's what you're doing right now. You're prepping for it.
So Zach made a good point. Zach Shucker says, create a logbook for your car, keep maintenance notes, but also any data so you can quickly reference it anytime you go to an event. And that's something Eric and I talked a lot about earlier, was keeping notes, and something I'm particularly bad about, but I do have some track
Dude,
maps
you carry
that I
that
look
Joe
at.
Marco book around everywhere. What do you mean you're bad at?
Well, Zach works for HMS. Ironically, Zach, I was going to share the notebook that HMS carries.
That wasn't a stack question, Zach.
It really wasn't. No, but I was prepared. So HMS has a notebook that you can make all those types of notes, whether it's set up or changes. I also
didn't plan that. We really didn't plan that.
No, it was really good timing is what it was. Just exceptional timing. I mean, when you're as good at just going with the flow and the comedic timing as we are, sometimes things just fall into your lap. Just kind of works out.
Yeah, that's it.
That's totally prepared. So making notes, but on your setup, tire temps, tire pressures, whatever you determine are kind of the key things to track. You don't need to track everything. And I've seen people do that as well. That get obsessed with tracking every little thing that changes, every little tiny. Try to stick to the key things and note those session to session, and you'll learn what those are as you learn your car. Which goes back to cleaning. You know what I was thinking when you were talking about cleaning your car? I'm buying a new car this weekend, and every time I've owned a million cars. For somebody my age, it's a problem, a little bit of a problem. Every time I get a new car, I wash it, and it's like a familiarization session. You're like, oh, this is here. This is where this doorknob is. This is where you learn all the little things. And I think cleaning your race car, if you have the chance to do it, especially right now when we're all sitting at home with our masks on, quarantine, it really gives you the opportunity to go, hey, the next time I look at that spring or that shock or whatever, there's not damage or something. You'll notice when there's a change.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. What other goals do we have? Folks watching, what goals are you setting for yourself to get back on track? Give us some examples of those, whether it's a technique. Hey, I need to attack the brake pedal better. Or
I want to hear from Cameron. He's on there. We got a really aggressive campaign in NASA Great Lakes with tire temps and pressures this year. I'd like to hear if he and thank you, Cameron, for that. You need to have him on here, by the way. I really like him.
We've talked a little bit. We need to have that conversation, Cameron. I was just going to say my goal. I want all of my tire temperatures to be 7 degrees hotter. That's my goal,
dude.
No, I just
you get up out of the range.
Yeah, I want to be right there. I want to get too hot. I want them to be so hot that they just melt on the track.
Yeah, well, here's a goal for you. How do you get all of them in the operating range? Right in the sweet spot. Nice, pretty face right across. Maybe 10 degrees Fahrenheit across the front end, nice and balanced.
Yeah. Well, how many folks have had, so let's take this kind of scenario, Eric. Maybe you're running with a group like NASA Great Lakes and some others that are in the same position. You're not going to be in the right seat. Maybe you're an instructor. You spend a lot of your time going back and forth with your student. Now you've got a little extra time in the event.
Oh man.
What's the first thing you're going to do? And I'm thinking tire temps and pressures, getting hot temps and pressures, flying in, no cool down lap, coming off the track fast, having a buddy staged in pit lane.
Weekend. This is a test weekend with all the
Yeah.
available time. Any instructor that doesn't have a student, it's going to feel like you just hit the lotto with available free time. You really need a plan to expose it and abuse it. I'd be hanging out in pit lane. I would accidentally leave my car in pit lane frequently and not on grid. And I might even do that if we have a Mid-Ohio event. That's where you play with your tires.
If the keys are in it, just take it if you're there. I'm just kidding. Cameron also has some good thoughts, and this was something I was thinking about. I haven't owned a trailer in a couple of years, but I remember spending a lot of time doing this, and it's reorganizing the trailer in the shop. Spare parts stack up, so you don't need to hang them anymore. Don't need to hang on to them anymore. Anything that kind of gives you that spring cleaning, taking stock of what you got, getting rid of stuff you don't need. All that stuff helps support your driving goals, because to be able to focus on driving, it's kind of like cleaning your room. Like if I'm working from home and there's something to do in the house that like needs to be cleaned or done, I can't really focus until I do that first. It's kind of like get your house in order, and then that'll allow you to focus more on your driving and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what Cameron's just writing about, organization and his tires right there. This would be very interesting to Cameron just wrote, by the way, guys, if you're not friends with Cameron on Facebook, I highly recommend. He's a fantastic guy that has some wonderful resources. He's the smartest tire guy in the industry that I know right now. Right there, Cameron Parson. He's also a wheel. Check out his Facebook page.
If you think you know anything about tires, just tell him everything that you know. He'd love to hear all of your completely, off base facts about tires. Just kidding. Don't do that.
Picture about his cat.
Just ask him questions and learn.
No, but serious. You got a tire plan going in. We talked about all this stuff, and and it ended up coming around data because you like to steer it that way, right? But we talked about a goal of a plan of attack to get at the track based on reviewing last year's notes or last season's notes and going to attack some personal goals. And then we broke it all the way down to how do we show the bottom 50% of the speed trace going into the corner and relate it to all the data feed. How do you figure out how to get better? Yeah. And we were talking about the bottom 50% of the speed trace before a bunch of corners.
Right, because you asked me, where do most people see red lights on their apex in the cornering process, right? That was kind of the conversation. And I said halfway through the braking zone to the apex is usually where they're not on the outside of the friction circle, depending on the type of corner, whether there's elevation change or not. That's where you're going to see the most red lights for the vast majority of us.
And just so you guys know, Rains told me he got some data already for this. So if we do this right, he's going to impress us.
We'll see.
Because I was hiking when we were talking.
I was actually just watching YouTube videos the whole time. I wasn't preparing for anything. I don't know what you're talking about. Just kidding. We've got some data to look at from Indianapolis Motor Speedway to celebrate the month of May, which is now the month of August for 2020, which is really a major bummer. I've gotten into IndyCar, Indy 500 past couple of years. That's a good reason to go see Eric. Maybe I need to come up for the Indy 500 sometime, do an Indy trip. So we're going to be looking at turn one.
Your drinking goggles.
My drinking goggles. They're right back here. I look pretty goofy with them on. Maybe I'll wear my mask too. I'll put this on. You need that in the infield at Indy, right? So we're going to be looking at turn one at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which is going to be this guy right here. And that's going to be our braking zone going into where we turn off of the actual Indianapolis Motor Speedway oval into the infield. So it's going to be a hard threshold braking corner where we're going to be braking as hard as we can to get the car slowed down from the fastest part of the track, which is going to be in this car, which will be about 130 miles per hour. And we're going to slow the car down.
Any idea what we're in right here? This car?
This is I believe this is a Porsche Cayman GT4.
Okay.
Yes, Porsche Cayman. Stock car, not modified. So we're seeing about 130 130 miles per hour on the straightaway here, Eric. We got a big long braking zone. And then we're going to about 40 miles per hour, just above 40 miles per hour minimum corner speed here. So we've got a big threshold brake zone, attacking the brake pedal. And for the most part, what I'm looking at here with this driver, and I'll go back to this lap because this is the one I spent more time looking at, I'm seeing the tops of the speed traces, not quite a sawtooth, but in general, they're pretty good. They're not bad. Do you agree? They could be a little sharper, but not bad.
I see what's happening once it falls over. That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, there's something funky going on right here. And that the reason we wanted to point this out is because we're going to look at a couple of things on the Apex light display.
Dude, look at you, Mr. Software. You got this stuff down. Look at that 2 red lines.
I've been practicing. You
got a career in this, kid.
So let's take a look at this part of the braking zone. So this driver's going into the brake zone. We're seeing red lights on the Apex Pro right here as well in the brake zone. He's not braking really hard. You can see that on the speed trace as well. But what I really want to point out is what we see from right here into the middle part of the corner. The red lights never go away. There's a little instantaneous moment of all green lights. But if we dig a little deeper and we look at our longitudinal G or we look at the friction circle, the whole story becomes apparent. So how do you want to dig deeper on this one?
When we were talking earlier, we were going to show people where in the corner there's opportunity, and we're going to back that up, right? And explain that. So if you're looking at your own data, you're going, how do I get faster? Ultimately, it comes down to right here on this spot of the track, there's this opportunity. How do I go get it?
Yep, exactly. For this driver, there's one thing I noticed right away is the slope change on the speed trace that I just pointed out. So now I'm looking at 2 points of feedback right here. I'm looking at the speed trace and I'm looking at the Apex lights, and I'm going to see how those interact with one another right here.
Can I do a favor? Can you do me a favor right there?
Sure.
Right where that arrow touches in on the speed trace?
Yep.
Did you put your cursor right there? And can you flick this over to long G? And we can see what that means. Love for you to toggle back and forth. We said it was 2 red lights. We already know where the blue icon is in the brake zone.
Yep. Right here.
Look at that interesting trace.
That's got some
big
weird
old
stuff going on, huh?
Wonky wonk. Yeah. Well, tell everybody what they're looking at there.
So this is the initial brake application where my second arrow is right now. That's where the driver's going to the brake pedal. I've got some weird stuff going on right here. We're only braking at about -0.6, which in a stock Cayman GT4 is far under the threshold capability. This should be over -1 G in a flat braking zone in this car. Maybe right around -1 G is pretty simple. But then I see all this variation. And remember where those crosshairs are, Eric, right at turn-in. This car's initiating turn-in right where we have it stopped, where the crosshairs are stopped.
Can you throw the lateral on there now and show the change in that? Everybody, if you're following me, see how that, boom. Look, he's actually creeping up on the wheel, right to the, wow. He's drifting and then turning far out. Guys, that's how you kind of figure out, well, that's where you figure out where you're turning, right? That blue spot right on the track.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the 2 red Apex Pro lights. So as he's beginning turning the wheel, there's 2 red Apex lights. Opportunity.
Yep. And the big thing, and you're right to look at lateral G for your turn-in initiation, because he's just started adding steering input here because of that lateral G trace. Like you just pointed out, we're looking at lateral. It's starting up, meaning we're starting to put some load in laterally. We're starting to turn the wheel to the right in this instance. So what I'm going to do is toggle back to long G, because I noticed there was some funk going on. There's some funk going on. He's still at -0.6 while he's starting to turn in here. That's a pretty decent amount of braking for starting to add lateral G. So you notice he gets out of the brake pedal. This trace goes up. He's releasing the brake pedal.
Vertical central. That's popping. That's popping hard off the brake. That nose is jumping.
Yep. Absolutely. And the big thing that I'm concerned about, Eric, if you're watching from home and you're looking at your own data and you're going, I want to know if I'm having this problem. There's two things to look at here, in my opinion. Is there any variation in that long G trace that looks kind of like this? It should go. Let's do an example of what it should look like. What in the best case scenario, we'd get something that looks kind of like this. Is that fair to say, Eric?
Yeah. Ish.
Best case scenario, something ish along those lines. We shouldn't see that variation at the bottom. So if you're seeing that and you're seeing red lights, that means we're under the limit of the tire and we're doing something funky with our foot on the brake pedal. We're releasing brake, we're adding brake again. If you see all green lights and you're doing that, you might be at the threshold of the brakes. You might actually be dealing with ABS intervention. You're probably going to be seeing more than negative 0.6 longitudinal G. That's an important feedback point, is seeing, okay, there are two red lights here. The algorithm's determined based on something I've done somewhere else, there's more grip available. To me, that points out right away, Eric, this guy just needs to go work a little bit on his brake release. He's braking too hard too early. I'm sorry, he's braking too early. He's not actually braking hard enough. And the brake release is just a little backwards.
Can I ask a favor?
Sure.
Click a couple other laps on there. Let's see if this is a trend, right?
Look at a couple more laps.
Same stuff. Look at that.
Looks pretty consistent to me.
Yep. Let's just make sure it wasn't fluke.
Oh, always good to double check. So what's your goal? What's your goal for yourself if you see that? If you're preparing, if this is you, Eric, and you're looking at your data and you're going, I wonder what I'm doing in the brake zone for turn one, and that's what you're doing, what goal are you setting for yourself based off?
Find the nearest auto trader because I'm putting the car up for sale. Sorry.
I'll buy it if it's a GT4.
Whose data is they're watching? Golly, that there's a big jump. I got to change the shape of that brake trace. I got to go into attack mode, which I can probably go a whole marker later, and then trail off. While
boom, something like that.
Yeah, I would be looking at where I turn the wheel and what's happening with long G as it's coming off, how they relate to each other, because this guy's popping off the brake hardcore.
Right here.
Right.
Yep.
Can you put the axis? The cursor on long G where it's crossing the zero axis on the way up as he's coming off the brake and turning in. In other words, yeah, right there. Right, look at that. He's going to massive power pre-apex. Red flag.
In a slow corner.
Red flag.
Yep. Big old nope.
Yep. Oh, look at the lights. Look, that says how much grip's using. Boom.
It makes it all pretty apparent here. When we're at this point in the corner, what that's telling me, Eric, that he's still seeing, he's committing to throttle prematurely. He's also not fully committed to the throttle, and doesn't have a whole lot of as much lateral G in the car as the car will take. So if I toggle over to lat and I see 0.98 lateral G, that 0.98 number is the reason that we're seeing red lights here. This is a Cayman GT4. This thing will do probably 1.3 lateral G.
This guy's headed to push, I'll bet you $100. If he's on that much throttle right here, back on long.
This front end won't go nowhere. I can't get it to turn. I don't.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he's so early. He's overbroke, and he's going back to a handful of gas and throwing wheel in it. Wow. That's probably a symptom across the whole track.
Real quick on this same on the long G trace here, Eric. Todd Checkley was asking if it could be a downshift, and it absolutely could be a downshift, Todd, and it probably, in all reality, probably is. I know this is a manual transmission car, but we shouldn't see that much variation. I can show you an example of a properly executed heel toe downshift, but if that
thing was flopped around, that would probably be the right look for a heel toe effort. Yeah. It's skewed onto the right side, hardcore.
It would. And you really don't see a huge change in longitudinal G with a properly executed heel toe at threshold brake, because whatever you do, disengaging the clutch, changing gears is going to change the acceleration of the car just a little bit, right? You're going to
talking about maximum long G?
Yeah, I'm talking about if we're braking at threshold, when you engage the clutch, it's not going to change. The brakes slow the car down, right? So the brakes have the biggest effect on long G. the driveline is going to have a very minimal effect. We're going to see it a little bit, but it's very minimal. So if I look at data from a driver that has really smooth, good downshifts, good rev matching, you don't really even notice it in long G. So it definitely could be a downshift, and that might be something if this driver was sitting here going, hey, I was struggling with downshift.
Go to the end of the back straight and see if there's well. Let's just go there right now, right?
Sure.
Guys, this is how I look at data. If it's there, if it exists in that type of corner, it's going to be down in the next one too. And remember, sometimes you got to look at a couple laps because we don't know if there's goofy traffic in front of them.
This one looks pretty consistent as well, Eric, and I'm not seeing any of the same.
Yeah.
A little bit of the same tendency
here. Same
but
skewed shape where it's slanted to the right, skewed right.
No.
That is skewed. Look at that same thing, and same thing going into turn one right there.
Yep. We're not quite seeing the same big variation of braking being applied here. It's a little more nuanced.
Look at the terminal though. Excuse me. Look at the maximum lat G's. He's not actually. That should be.
Well, that's right there.
Interesting.
Something else that I think was important to look at here is the and why we're seeing these red lights. And this is really interesting. I'm going to pull up the friction circle down here, and so what we're looking at on the bottom screen is a friction circle display. On the top, we've got the GPS satellite image. Right now, we're right between hole 8 and 9 on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway infield golf course, and we are moving.
Nice golf course reference.
Was that a good one? I was trying to get that in there.
Did you do some preparation before this?
Yeah, I already. Every joke is already pre-input into the whole deal. It just comes back out. No, improv was my thing back in the day. I did a lot of improv work. Trained with a specialist.
Jazz hands.
Yeah.
Hey, somebody like to get a free iPad. Just sign right now because did you
a free? Are you giving away my mom's iPad? This is a serious conversation.
Ryan Lindgren, are you on this?
You have to watch all the episodes, folks, or it doesn't make any sense. Let's look at something here that I thought was interesting. I'm going to go back to turn one actually because
the first thing is he's got his device in here. It's slightly skewed.
Yep, yeah, he does. He's got it rotated probably towards the driver because we've got that top plane of the friction circle is a little tilted. That's okay. Just go make sure the device to fix that. Just make sure the logo on the back of the Apex Pro is facing the direction the car is going, and you won't have any problems. But that is going to skew some of our data.
Some people turn the lights too far toward them, right? You don't got it. You can see they still work beautifully.
Absolutely, I would suggest moving it. And my current favorite position for the Apex Pro is actually at the base of the windshield, directly in front of the driver. So if I'm facing this way, every car has space between the top of kind of the gauge cluster and the dash down to the windshield. There's usually a flat-ish space where you can mount the device. It's tilted up a little bit. It's not blocking anything out the windshield, and you'll still be able to see the lights pretty easily. So what I'm going to do here, looking at the friction circle, Eric's drag the line forward until I'm at basically where we've got maximum lateral G in the middle of the corner. And I want to see if I'm at the edge of the friction circle or not.
Can you zoom in on that corner quite a bit? Can you zoom in on that corner quite a bit? The location of the apex is really key in this scenario.
Yeah, so we would say our apex is probably right there.
I'll go with that.
What I find interesting, before the driver goes to power here, so he has not committed back to big throttle yet. We can see that because we've got 0.99 lateral G and 0.08 longitudinal G, slightly positive longitudinal G. So this is probably just before, or maybe he's just thinking about going to the throttle. Here's where we are on the friction circle. What I find interesting is we're very close to the edge of the friction circle. Look how many red lights we have. So there's something that this driver's done somewhere else that the algorithm's going.
Super loaded up right there.
Yeah, like, dude, you're at the edge of the friction circle. You're at the edge of the friction circle you're drawing, but you're not at the edge of the friction circle you could be drawing. You could be plotting. You could be creating. So the device, this is why adding in this extra element to your data review is so important, because you can go, okay, I'm right. Look, that's the edge. That's pretty close to the edge. But if you really think about it, if we do just quick GSUM calculation here, Eric, I don't think we're going to be anywhere near the edge of this car's capability.
Oh, no way.
This car can probably do 1.3, 1.4, 1.5.
With a great driver for 1.5, yeah, on those stock tires. It's just a bounce chassis. What happens when you move the blue icon a little bit forward? Just play it for a second. I'd be really interested to see. Holy cow.
Go back to big throttle.
When does that thing first, where does it first go above 0? Let me see. Positive G's. We're at a little bit. I know this is hard for you, isn't it? I forgot how this is difficult. He goes.
It's hard to get it exactly right.
A lot of power.
That's about it right there. It's hard to stop it exactly where you want it. That's pretty close right there. That's 0.2.
So token overslow. That tells a story everywhere. It's probably everywhere on here, isn't it?
Yep. Peter Kraus says, too long a coast. He said, damn, overslowing for turn 1. Big time, big time, big time. Apex score dropping too soon and too quickly. Very, very true. Ryan Finch says Cup 2s. I believe so, Ryan. I think these are the OE GT4 tires. Too late to big throttle. Peter's given us all sorts of good tidbits here. We think we know the edge, but we don't know the edge.
Will you put the cursor on the peak long G at the bottom of the friction circle? I want to show everybody where that's located, and put the yes, right there is where's the car at? Where's the blue dot at on the track at that point? This is important.
He doesn't even get there in this corner. How about right there?
It's on the tail end, isn't it? It's on the second half of the long G portion, not the first. It should be.
Brake, release, brake.
Yep. Should be look like that, right?
Yep. So
boom,
what's our
feather out versus feather in, pop off?
Exactly. So what's our goal here? We've determined, okay, we're probably braking way too early. That's probably the overarching theme is we've got to find a way to be comfortable braking later. How do you treat this, Eric? If you're going, I don't feel comfortable braking later. I know I'm doing the double brake thing. I'm going back to throttle too early, and it's all because I'm braking way too early, too soft. I'm slowing the car down way too much. What's the first step to fix that? In your mind.
In this scenario, if I'm sitting right seat with this guy or I'm trying to get in his head, I'm not going to let him brake at the 1200 marker, right? He's so far ahead, right? You can move everything down one marker, and we're going to just keep creeping up on it until you have to use that run out there because he's just dragging the brakes way too early. So I'm going to condense that for him, and therefore in my head, I'm going to condense it down a little bit. If it's me and I'm driving, I'm going to say half a marker. So I'm moving BOB half a marker. But this is really grossly afraid of the brake. This guy needs some threshold braking practice.
Go in the parking lot, hammer the brake pedal, Tyrac Street Survival.
Probably never felt what the ABS feels like. Yep. ABS in this car is great.
And you know, to be honest, Eric, a lot of programs people come up through, and no knock on any organizations or anybody, but there's a lot of people can get significant track time without ever being required to do a threshold braking drill or a skid pad.
Yeah, you can bypass it, sadly.
Absolutely, and it's really, really critical because how are you supposed to know what the edge, what the car will do on the brake pedal on that?
Every DE driver, in my opinion, leaving an event needs to go. I know what ABS feels like. Activation.
Yep.
Preaching choir.
Absolutely, and we'll see this as soon as this driver unlocks that extra potential, that extra confidence.
Nothing. He's braking at 0.7, negative 0.7. That's nothing.
Yeah, I'll do that in my wife's Accord on the way home. Yeah.
What's that?
I said I'll do that in my wife's Accord on Sumitomo All Seasons on the way home.
I'll do that in the Kroger parking lot.
I don't know if I'd admit that. If anybody sees a white M4 running people over in parking lots around Indianapolis, Eric, there was a guy in an M4 the other day, and he just had BMW driver written all over the car. I mean, no turn signals, pulling in front of people. I was like, that's Eric Meyer's twin.
Oh,
No,
harsh.
not really. I'm just kidding. It's a BMW
Bad
driver.
internet connection. Bad internet connection. So let's keep going here.
I'm just messing with you.
Using all the tire braking. There's where his peak longitudinal G's is way too deep in the brake zone. So now we got to reinvent everything else from here because we're upside down. We're distorted. We're hosed up.
And you said BOB earlier, right? Beginning of braking. Move that up a little bit further. That's critical for this.
That's going to force a driver to have to deal with that. He's just dragging the brakes earlier, and he needs a confidence boost. That car will stop on a dime, and he's not using the brakes.
What's unique about this corner that's different from a lot of corners on road courses? What do you have here that makes this?
I hate when you ask me those loaded questions, and I
makes this different.
Like, what is he asking? I'm gonna guess wrong. I'm gonna guess wrong. That's when I call text Peter. Peter's actually in my ear right now. He's telling me what to say.
Earpiece. I'm just going for runoff here. Look at all this extra runoff. What's the consequence if you blow the brake zone?
Got a 2.5 mile runoff.
Yeah. You just keep going around the oval.
Thank you very much. That's pretty funny. Can I tell you my most popular social media post this year? It's a picture of bacon. How sad is that? My sister pointed that out to me. Like, way to go, Mr. Photographer.
That's hilarious. Well, let's wrap this up because I've got a dinner appointment. I got to go pick up some sweet potato fries at the grocery store. On the way home.
Go to another brake zone
like this.
Go to another brake zone and dissect this again. Go to another thresholdy or something that's significant.
We want to look at let's see. Let's do
anything that's red right there, but right in the middle of it, right there. You betcha. See the same. We're talking about goals. Is this the driver's tendency? A little bit different car or different kind of corner type, right? You're carrying a lot and rolling it right in there. Later pecs looks like they're okay there. What's happening on the line here? So I'm looking at that.
Well, he's
look at that's got a little hockey on it right there where you're playing.
Not bad.
What's magnitude? What's max long G? How much of the tires are you using going in?
Same thing, about 0.7.
Check out the green
lights. I'm a
lights.
little ahead of you on my when I'm looking at it here. He's got green lights on the initial braking, but he's getting some red lights in the middle of the corner here, which is telling me that he's overslowing in general. If you've got red lights mid-corner,
that's pretty normal.
Carrying more speed on the same radius. But I'm looking at this right.
Does he pick up the throttle because he overslowed in the middle of the corner?
That's a fantastic question to ask.
Thank you.
Folks, if you're watching.
Thank you. Eric Meyer.
That's a saying. That was good. If you have a question to ask yourself while you're looking at your data and you go, I think I'm overslowing, because we've all done it. Eric and I are both very guilty of overslowing corners. It's just a consequence of what we do. It's a great thing to ask yourself. Am I picking up the throttle? I overslowed it and then I go back to throttle. Am I doing that? Ask yourself that. So let's ask that question. He's trying to pick up the throttle, I think. He's getting back to 0 right here. This looks like a big long
miles an hour.
Yep.
Yeah. Look at all those red lights. Look at that. He's probably looks like he's on and off it.
Yep. I think this see this, Eric, from -1.6 up to 0. That's
Can you flop over on the speed trace right now to try to decipher that as well?
We're pretty flat here at the bottom of the speed trace right here. He starts picking up speed right here, so we're probably back on the throttle here.
Uh-huh.
See where the bump is on the speed trace? I'm going to stop it right on top of it. That's about where I think he's squeezing back to power. Just a little bit.
You want to throw a friction circle on there, sir? For that whole segment? Trying to get it. Whoa.
Sorry, I had some funky configurations in there.
Yeah, you did.
We're right on the edge here. again, of his friction circle, not what our theoretical would be. Notice we've still got a red light. We're at -1 lateral G, which is going to be.
Can you back that car up a little bit? It's going to get ugly, isn't it? There's going to be a lot more red lights, I'm guessing.
You want to replay the whole thing?
Oh, my good. Oh.
What'd you think about that? Why'd you have that response? Tell us. Tell us.
You moved it back into a whole bunch of. You get the programmers to make some more features on this. You know anybody? I know a guy. Look at all that red right there. Oh my goodness.
He's flirting with the edge of the friction circle, but there's a lot left in the car. This is when your own friction circle is not the best one to reference, because if you're driving the car well under the limit, then you really need to know closer where that limit is, right? So we're looking at this red light over here as a little bit more of a truer indicator of what's being done with the car, right? So if you're looking at your friction circle and you're trying to decide, can my friction circle just get bigger? First indication is going to be here. Second thing you want to look at are, what are the values? This is lateral G. This is longitudinal G. What are the values that are making up those plots that you're seeing here? So although we're at the edge of the friction circle here, like you said, we've got red lights right there. We're at the edge of the friction circle, but we got red lights on the display.
And tell me if I'm saying this right. And what those red lights mean is the car has been, and the device has been modeling everything. And it says, over there, you can do more.
Yep.
The car can do more over there and you can do more, but here you're not using it and it's represented.
The best way to think about it, folks that are technical or have an engineering background, you're familiar with the word interpolate. But the device is a master interpolator. It's taking conditions and accelerations and speeds that it's seeing everywhere on the track. And if there's a particular place that's similar, so let's say there's another 50 mile per hour corner somewhere else on the track, it's going, what's the car doing there? What kind of accelerations are we seeing there? Are we turning left? Are we turning right? Are we going uphill? Are we going downhill? Are we banked? Are we cambered? All these types of things.
Yep.
That's how it's deriving that. It's not just looking at, are we on the edge of the friction circle or not? There's more that goes into it. So it's a additional piece of information that's telling us maybe our friction circle is just a little too small. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we're not concerned yet about being on the edge. Maybe
look at there. It's under 1G right there on the far right side. Sorry. And then we're in here. Yeah. That thing should be coming in here having fun.
Absolutely.
Can you go to a long G on the bottom? Yep. Can you talk about, with respect to probably what's going on here, those little up and down little marks, right? What's probably happening with those drivers' feet, if you guessed?
Well, when we're graphing long G, a decrease in long G, negative long G is going to be braking, right? So this big steep downhill that we see, this big steep decrease, that's going to be a hard brake application, or in this case, a pretty reasonably firm brake application. When the long G
Tell me about accelerator, because we don't really know what's going on.
Yeah. So acceleration, positive acceleration, anything above zero is definitively going to be the gas pedal. But if we start to transition the weight to the back and we start to add throttle, we can see values right at or around zero because we're turning. Remember, we've got added scrub from the lateral G that's in the car right now. So the tire is committed to lateral G. So just think about this. If you're making a tight turn and you're not on the gas pedal, does the car slow down?
Everybody said,
yes.
Yeah, of course, dumb.
Fair to say, right? You're holding a constant tight radius. The car's going to slow down if you're not on the throttle. So you're going to have to maintain some throttle. So it's not a hard and fast rule that above zero longitudinal G means you're on the accelerator pedal. Because right now, this guy, at this point, we see speed starting to increase right here, but long G is still below zero. Right? Even at this point, it's still below zero, but speed is increasing. And the reason long G is still below zero is because, tell me if this makes sense. He's trying to accelerate. He's accelerating. Speed is going a little bit, but the car's not accelerating much. The car is accelerating very slowly, right? It's trending upwards. It's accelerating slowly. It's at or near zero. Maybe we're going down.
Look at that little dip.
Am I missing something?
I'd love to know what Peter would say about the dip just right of the
here.
cursor. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, and give me some feedback on that. Peter said, "Yep, scrub." There's a lot of things going on that we have to ask ourselves here. So there's some maintenance throttle is what I would call what's going on there. So think about acceleration. When you go to the gas pedal, whoa, you accelerate. Weight goes to the back. You can be accelerate. You can be accelerating. You can be gaining speed, but hardly accelerating. Right? The acceleration is very minimal. Right? If you're on the interstate going 80 miles an hour and you squeeze into the gas pedal, the car doesn't really accelerate a whole lot. Right? So when we're thinking about longitudinal G, we have to kind of think about some of these things. So what I think this driver is doing here is he is basically just resting his foot on the throttle through here. Just resting his foot, squeeze, and a little bit of acceleration. Just a little bit of gas.
There's the middle of that little dip to the right of your cursor. Before we wrap up here, we'll get into our 1 hour time frame commitment.
I think that's a release of the throttle. I think this guy where the cursor is right now, there's a divot that goes towards. I think he's adding some throttle, maintenance throttle, and I think he's releasing it right here.
And with your OBD2 interface, we'd be able to, in some cases, read that depending on car.
Yep.
Ooh, looky there.
Yep. No OBD2 data on this one, but yes, you would be able to see RPM, which would be a nice indicator. Are we on the throttle or not? Throttle position, and coming soon, pedal position.
What? You didn't tell me that, loser.
Sorry, sometimes you gotta wait.
Hey, we're pushing our 1 hour. That was our commitment.
All right, let's wrap it up. I'm gonna put my mask back on because I'm heading out of here. Everybody wear your mask. I just feel like it's a good idea to be a good example. So I'm aware of this. You know, when you're watching like a
that for the crowd.
Yeah, I know. When you're watching like a TV show and they're not wearing their seatbelts, I'm always kind of thinking about the producers. I'm like, I know you got a story to tell, but like show people wearing seatbelts because people mimic what they see. You know, come on.
Real quick before I go, NASA Great Lakes folks. What we're doing is we're waiting on Mid Ohio to tell us if they can go green. So it's not in our lap what's happening. Mid Ohio is going, oh, help! We need to open. They have nationwide a week after we're there. They have Chin the Monday after we're there. The 22nd through 24th of May. Mid Ohio does not know, based on the local government ordinances in the county, for all the things they got to do if they can open, if they're that kind of business. So that's what they're battling. And when they know something, they call Jay. Jay calls me, and we come up with we execute our heads up campaign. So that's what's happening behind the scenes.
Good deal. Eric, we got a webinar next week with my buddy Robbie Foley, who is just one of the fastest guys out there. I know Peter knows Robbie. And we're going to be talking about braking. So if you guys are watching right now, you enjoyed some of this analysis and what we were talking about, I would definitely recommend hopping on the webinar. It's next Tuesday. I'll post a link. It's $59, and that's because we are having one of the fastest guys in North America at the moment on the podcast, on the webinar with us, co-driving with Bill Auberlin. Heard his name before? That's his co-driver. Robbie knows his stuff. He's got a GTD class pole. He's got 2 class wins at Mosport and at Petit Le Mans.
Wicked and iRacing. Yeah, except at Sebring.
He is a paid iRacer at the moment. So if you guys want to hear what that path looks like, hop on and join us. But sign up. It's $59 if you are a Lap Timer Plus subscriber. There's a 20% discount. We've got another mouth to feed for this one, so little more price. Normally we charge $49, but I think this is a $200 webinar all day long. I mean, Robbie's being around fast people helps you get faster. And if you look at it that way, just being there to absorb his thought process, it's invaluable. I'm pumped to learn more from him.
You're talking too much, salesman. Get Cameron on here. Cameron the week after. Cameron's good.
We'll get Cameron.
Get PK, the Ripper. I call him the Ripper. It's a long story. It's a good show, dude. Good show.
Sounds like we don't need to hear the explanation on that one. Brian Bolander just joined. Hello. All right, you ready to call it? What's your parting words?
I'm speechless. Let's hope this virus goes away and we're back to some normalcy and just the whole life comes back together. It's been pretty tough for everybody. So I just
It
wish
has
you well
been.
out there. Hang in there, guys.
Absolutely. Thinking about all of you. Mental health is important. Ready to get back to the racetrack. Bye, Facebook. See you later.
Cheers.
All right, I killed the stream.
Awesome. Hey, nice. That was fun.
Good deal. Nice work. I thought that was entertaining.
I will talk to you I don't know, after I take your quiz.
Okay.
See you, brother.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.